Everyone has that one thing they do for their parents, no matter how inconvenient it is. For me, it was fixing the old electrical wiring in their house. My girlfriend thought it was pathetic. She laughed every time I canceled plans because my parents needed help. She called it my retirement hobby. She stopped laughing the day the truth came out. My name is Nathan, and this is how a box of dusty electrical cables ended my relationship. My parents bought their little house almost 35 years ago. They never had much money. My dad worked construction. My mom cleaned offices at night. Everything they owned came from years of sacrifice. When I became an electrical engineer, my dad joked that he'd finally hired his own electrician. Ever since then, whenever something stopped working, I was the first call. Loose outlets, broken switches, old ceiling fans, I never minded. Those two people had spent decades fixing my problems. Helping them felt natural. My girlfriend Jessica didn't see it that way. We'd been dating for nearly 2 years. At first, she thought it was sweet. Then it became annoying. Every few weeks she'd complain, "Your parents call you for everything. They're adults. They can hire someone." Maybe they could have, but why spend hundreds of dollars when I could fix it for free in an afternoon? One Friday evening, we'd planned a fancy dinner. Reservations had been booked for weeks. An hour before we were supposed to leave, my dad called. Half the lights in the house had suddenly stopped working. He sounded embarrassed. "I know you're busy." "I'll figure something out." I could hear the disappointment in his voice. I told Jessica we'd have to postpone dinner. She stared at me, seriously. "They've survived 30 years. They can survive one night." I hesitated, then grabbed my toolbox. She rolled her eyes. "You're obsessed." When I arrived, the problem was worse than Dad realized. The wiring inside the breaker panel had started overheating. Several connections were badly damaged. One more heavy electrical load, and the entire panel could have caught fire. It took almost 5 hours to replace the damaged components safely. Around midnight, I finally got home. Jessica didn't ask if my parents were okay. She simply said, "So, was playing family handyman worth ruining our date?" I calmly explained what had happened. Her response stunned me. "You're exaggerating. They always invent emergencies because they know you'll come running." That sentence bothered me for days. A week later, my parents invited us over for Sunday lunch. Jessica agreed. I hoped spending time with them would help. Instead, things got worse. During lunch, my dad proudly showed Jessica the repaired electrical panel. He thanked me for saving him from an expensive repair bill. Jessica laughed. Out loud, "You know Nathan acts like he's the neighborhood superhero." Everyone at the table went quiet. She kept going. "I swear he'd rather play electrician than spend time with me." Mom forced an awkward smile. Dad looked down at his plate. I changed the subject, but the damage had already been done. On the drive home, I asked why she'd embarrassed them. "They're too dependent on you." "I'm just telling the truth." "No," I replied. "You were insulting people who have done nothing but welcome you." She insisted I was overreacting. For several weeks, we barely discussed it. Then came the night everything changed. I was working late when my security camera alerted me to movement at my parents' house. Smoke. Thin, gray smoke drifting from the garage. I called Dad immediately. No answer. I drove there as fast as I could. A faulty extension cable connected to an old freezer had started burning. Luckily, the fire hadn't spread yet. I disconnected the power before firefighters even arrived. Later, one of the firefighters inspected the house. He pointed toward the electrical panel I'd repaired weeks earlier. If that old wiring hadn't already been replaced, this entire house would have gone up. My stomach dropped. Dad quietly sat on the porch shaking. Mom kept thanking everyone through tears. That night I realized something. Helping them hadn't just saved money. It had probably saved their lives. The following weekend, Jessica came over. I told her what the firefighters had said. Instead of apologizing, she shrugged. "You're making yourself sound like a hero again." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not because she disagreed, because she couldn't celebrate the fact that my parents were safe. Everything somehow became about her. I asked her one simple question: if your parents needed help, wouldn't you go? She answered immediately, not if it ruined my plans. That told me everything I needed to know. A month later, we ended our relationship. It wasn't because of electrical wiring, or canceled dates, or family dinners. It ended because our values were completely different. To her, helping family was an inconvenience. To me, it wasn't even a decision. About a year later, Dad finally retired. Using money he'd quietly saved for decades, he hired professionals to modernize the entire house. New wiring, new outlets, new lighting, everything. When the project finished, he handed me a small cardboard box. Inside were pieces of the old wiring I'd replaced over the years, burned cables, broken switches, rusty outlets. He smiled. I figured you might want a souvenir. I laughed. What would I do with this? He looked at me for a moment. Whenever you wonder if helping us mattered, open that box. It still sits on a shelf in my garage today, not because I enjoy looking at old electrical parts, because every damaged wire reminds me of something much more valuable. The people who raised me never asked for luxury, only help when they truly needed it. Today, I'm married to someone completely different. My wife actually reminds me to check on my parents. Sometimes she even comes with me. She says something I'll never forget. One day, if we're lucky. Our kids will care about us the way you care about your parents. Looking back, Jessica never lost me because I loved my parents too much. She lost me because she couldn't respect the people who sacrificed everything to give me the life I have. Love isn't measured by expensive gifts or fancy dinners. Sometimes it's measured by the willingness to grab a toolbox on a Friday night because your parents need you. If someone laughs at the way you love your family, they're telling you far more about themselves than they are about you. If you've ever been criticized for putting family first, share your story in the comments below. Sometimes the strongest relationships aren't built on romance alone. They're built on shared values.